Alright, hey guys, this is Brandon with the Z.I.A. I'm sorry, I gotta kind of keep it down right now. This is, everyone's kind of awake in my house and they're slowly getting sleep, so gotta keep it down for a little bit. But I'm making this video today basically because tomorrow is going to be kind of a tough day for a lot of people that I know, actually. And a couple reasons for myself personally, but the main reason for all of us is that, December 28th in 2009, we, all of us Avenged Sevenfold fans, we suffered a huge loss when our drummer, Jimmy the Rev Sullivan, passed on. And I mean, it was a complete shock to us all. It was a complete low blow. We never even seen anything like it coming. And like I said, it was just a complete shock, and we didn't know what to expect, know what to do. And today, well, whenever this video gets up, right now it's 9:11 p.m. in the 8th, and February 9th is going to be his birthday, and then, which is kind of creepy because I have mine, which is the 10th. But basically what I want to share is that, this is a video in memoriam for Jimmy. He's a really big part of my life. I kind of got introduced to him and his music back in 2005, and I was a horrible kid back then. And when I found him in Avenged Sevenfold, it just opened my life to a whole bunch of new doors. And I went from that horrible kid that nobody wanted to be around to that kid that a lot of people want to go to for advice or something like that. They made him especially. Y'all made a really big change in my life, and I'm very thankful for that. I'm thankful for him being in this band, for him being in this world, and being in everyone's life. And a couple things that I want to share that was that's kind of interesting is that, I find it interesting. Some might say I'm a dickhead for remembering this. I don't know, but it's interesting for the fact that there was a lot of things said when he passed that regarding his song Fiction, which is on their latest album Nightmare, and to a lot of things that were said in an interview which Revolver magazine gave a whole entire issue to Avenged Sevenfold and said, this issue's yours, you guys say anything you want about whatever you want. And they gave a huge piece about the Rev. And I remember they did an interview on Brian, which is, for those of you who don't know, which is Sinister Gates, their lead guitarist. And I can't remember everything word for word, but all I remember was that when he said when they were young, like maybe 13, 14, and they were just jamming out at his house one day, he was talking with him and his father, and he said, they were all joking around, and he said, I have a feeling that I'm gonna die when I'm 28, but if I do, then I'm not gonna worry. It's gonna be all right, because by the time I'd have passed on, I would have achieved a lot in my life, and I would have lived my life completely. Which is actually an interesting thing, because later on in the interview, Brian went on to say something that he felt that Jimmy had everything planned, which I wouldn't say had a lot of controversy, but a lot of people, when that interview was performed and people read it, a whole lot of people ruled that, okay, Jimmy did this and he committed suicide and that was it, which is not the case at all. But Brian felt that Jimmy had everything planned out, that Jimmy had everything pretty much predicted, that he knew he had to do this, he had to do that, that he had to make this and make everything that he did so grand. And Fiction being the last thing he ever did, that he ever wrote, he ever sang on, ever drummed on, everything like that, which Brian felt that he really did plan it all out, that because this and their song, which I believe is what Jimmy called his masterpiece, which is called Save Me, which is almost an 11-minute song. And they're just tremendously great songs. You listen to both of them because they're back to back. First Fiction, then Save Me. and you sit there and you go, you know, when you hear stuff from the Beatles or, you know, from the Rolling Stones or Led Zeppelin, you know, even someone in their own genre like Metallica, you'd sit there and go, you know, wow, even for Metallica that are notorious for like, you know, 8 minute long, you know, crazy instrumentals to like, you know, 8, maybe 10 minute long, you know, stories in a song, you're sitting there going, wow, you know, this is something I've never heard in this type of genre. This is something completely different. And you're sitting there going, how can one man really accomplish this? Which, like I said, what really blew my mind about Jimmy is he was an extraordinary individual. I mean, he could have been a one-man band if you wanted to. I mean, the guy, tremendous vocals. He can play guitar. I don't know how good, but he can play. There's been a few pictures and a few places here and there that I've noticed he plays bass. We know very well for, you know, when he wrote A Little Piece of Heaven with everyone else, that he's a very good piano player. He wrote out the parts for Critical Acclaim and A Little Piece of Heaven, and those are really good piano parts. And, you know, he's obviously a very good drummer. You know, my personal favorite song that I love about his fills is there's a song on their B-side CD called Demons, and it's a really good song. I hope you give it a listen to. And now I want to move on to my favorite memory about Jimmy, which sadly I can't remember, like I said, word for word, or the whole entire situation, but basically what it is that it was some kind of radio interview. I can't remember if it was Loveline or some other place, but they were all talking about, it was a little bit after Jimmy passed, and they said, you know, they asked M. Shadows, which, you know, his real name is Matt, and, you know, they asked him, so what is, you know, your most favorite memory about the guy that you can choose from that, you know, sticks in your head the most? And it's actually mine as well. When I heard it, I just, you know, I couldn't stop laughing, and I thought, wow, you know, this guy is such a great friend, and, you know, it kind of made me think that we have a lot in common. But they were saying that they were touring overseas one year, and they were in London, and they were at this bar, and all I clearly remember is that Matt said that there was a point when they're in that bar where he said, you know, I have to go take a piss. So he went to the bathroom. He said all the stalls are filled except for this one that they called like the Jackhammer or something like that. So it was like the most horrible place you can pee ever. So he said, you know, he wound up pissing in the sink. And he said some drunk, you know, British guy or whatever came in there. He was really pissed. And, you know, Matt kind of brushed it off and went back with his buddies at the bar table. But then the guy came back and he was starting trouble. So Matt just said, you know what, fuck it, and we'll go, you know, we're not going to cause any trouble. So he was with his girlfriend, which is now his wife, Valerie at the time. And they were walking outside, and the guy, he was still antagonizing him. He kept on yelling out profanity, vulgar terms, and then Matt pointed out that he was approaching Valerie with all these vulgar terms and all this profanity and, you know, slandering her because she was American. And he said there was one point where he was starting to get close. Then next thing he remembers, with as tall as Jimmy is, because he's a really tall guy, and with his, you know, I wouldn't say short, but with the size of everyone else, Matt said all he could remember was he sees this big tall guy just reach literally over Valerie's head, just swings right at the guy and gets him clear in his face. And this all went right over Valerie and right into the guy. And so 10 minutes later, he said cops got there. And Jimmy kept on running around the place, you know, slandering them. And, you know, because in London, cops don't carry guns. You know, so he was running around saying, you know, oh, what kind of cops are you? You guys aren't real cops. You don't have guns. And he said maybe about a good half hour of, you know, basically fucking with him. He finally decided to give up, and he spent the night in jail, and it was a pretty crazy story. But that has to be my favorite Jimmy memory, and you know, like I said, the guy was really, really, really great individual. And I was fortunate and lucky enough to, which is actually my very first concert that I've ever been to in my whole entire life. I went to go, it was a hometown show here in 2009. And matter of fact, I remember the day clearly, April 14th. And it was Rev Theory opened for him, Buck Cherry won on after, and it was Avenged Sevenfold, and it was the greatest night of my life. I mean, Rev Theory and Buck Cherry are, bands that I don't listen to as much as Avenged, but I love them, as much. They get my respect in the musical world. And, I was fortunate enough to see that hometown show with Jimmy, and it was, I mean, since I said Jimmy, he can do vocals. I mean, he did a lot of vocals, more than just the album, It seemed every song they played, he had a huge part of the vocals, and it just made the song so much better. It made the night, the atmosphere, the vibe, everything was just so much better with the guy. And it made that night for me so much more perfect. I couldn't point out a single flaw no matter what, except for the fact that they were doing a song with Slash called "It's So Easy." It was a Guns N' Roses song, and Slash is playing on stage, and me and a best friend of mine, we noticed that we're looking at screen, like, what the fuck is that shining? And I mean, it wasn't shining like the light on the guitar. It was shining and it was like moving around. And we looked closely and we noticed his E string broke, and we're just like the thinnest E string. And we were just like, oh fuck, we're like, the dude's now playing with an E string. We're sitting there going, it's probably gonna hurt his solo. But I guess they made it through the show. Like I said, I didn't hear no difference, but I definitely saw the difference. But it was a really good night. And like I said, I'm making this video tonight because tomorrow I'm not really gonna have the time to kind of be anywhere tomorrow. I've got a lot of stuff to do tomorrow. I've got a funeral to attend to, unfortunately. Tomorrow is gonna be like one of the hardest days ever for me. And I'm making this video right now tonight because I'm not gonna have hardly enough time tomorrow. And it's just, I mean, this whole month, it's gonna be a wild ride. I mean, there's a lot of, I mean, from the past, year or two, there's been a lot of stuff going on, and it's just, it's as much as a happy day should be, we can't help but feel, it's gonna be a sad day too, because this guy, he's a hero to us all. He really touched us all in a special place, and it's just hard to think, he would have been 30, he would have been 30 years old. He would have been 30 years old today, and you're just sitting there going, wow, he was almost there, and he almost made it through, and it's just like, it's just really crazy that, someone who's that young, that talented, that perfect, just all of a sudden one day you hear it just dies, and it's real tragic and it's real sad. And it kind of sucks that all of us have to go through something like that. So this is my morning video for Jimmy, and I'll be playing a little piece of Fiction, which is the last song that he ever made, which has an interesting story behind it, that he originally titled Death, and he brought it in the studio and said, this is it, this is the last song that we need, and 3 days later he died, unfortunately. So I'm going to wrap up this video, this memoriam video for Jimmy the Rev Sullivan, with a small part of his song Fiction, which, you can pretty much go YouTube, Google, whatever the hell you want to do. And, this is it. Jimmy, bro, we love you. We seriously miss you. And I'm pretty sure we all can't wait for that day where we get to see you again and rock out with you again.